Welcome to the Adventure Photo Show. I'm Steve Riker, and this channel is all about telling your story with the camera and hopefully having fun doing it. This is the Friday night Adventure Photo Show, and we are doing a live stream, taking your questions, and going to talk to you a little bit about the photo challenge that I have in mind for the next couple of weeks, and really glad to have you all here. And typically, just to give you a little idea, if you haven't watched one of these live streams before, the way I like to run them is I would prefer to kind of give you a little bit of my monologue in the opening 10 to 15 minutes, and then after that point talk a little bit more, interact with those you guys who show up in the chat, and we kind of go from there in terms of Q&A. And of course, it's been about 2 weeks since I've done one of these live streams because my semester is just coming to a close, and of course I'm in school right now studying to be a nurse after leaving professional photography and kind of making some big career changes a little bit late in the game. And good evening, Tiff. You are not late at all. I am in my my clumsy intro. I always have a really hard time doing the intros when I'm live because I know that the majority of the folks that are on these live streams are folks that are consistently here, but at the same time I always feel like, you know, I might get some folks in who haven't been here before, so I like to try to, I'm always juggling that it's a bit of a struggle, creator struggles, as it were. Hey, Craig Hawkins, good to see you here. So yeah, I've been kind of wrapping things up with school, and I have been, you know, I finished the semester with a 4.0. I can tell you my motivation is very strong. Not only my desire to avoid having to go back to school for a third time and get another degree at some point in the future, but also just, you know, my desire to do well with nursing and be able to have the freedom to really pursue photography on the terms that I wish to. And I have to do this really quick. Hey, Christopher Holiday, King Yuzi, gang's all here. I have to just fix the lighting because it's a little bit too much, and it's going to drive me crazy if I don't do something about that. And I bumped the microphone, but okay, there we go. Hopefully that's a little bit better, not quite so bright on the face. Yeah, so anyways, the semester concluding, and it's, you know, I've been pretty full on doing my schoolwork, and excited to be able to spend a little bit more time now on my photography until next semester starts up. And one of the things that I have been spending a lot of time doing, as I would imagine many of you folks are also doing, is, you know, trying to make decisions about what to get people. And, you know, those that are near and dear to us, a lot of times we, or I would imagine, like to offer our gifts that we have in terms of our photography and be able to give that to people. And so, you know, my patrons that support this channel through Patreon, which I'll give a shameless plug, is patreon.com/livingvertical, and I think a handful of you guys who are in here at this point are patrons, and thank you very, very much for your support, because it makes this time that I can take to invest in this channel and photography and my documentary projects makes all that possible. And for anybody who doesn't know, I actually do documentary photography and filmmaking in addition to just talking about Fuji cameras and what I love and hate about them, and these live streams where we do Q&A stuff. And one of the things that I do for my patrons is I print photos every year, and I send them to them in addition to printing photo zines and a handful of other opportunities to print work. And I'm also, you know, printing some photos for my family members that, you know, a lot of times, especially like my mom and dad, I don't really know what to get them. Because, you know, my dad doesn't need more stuff in his house, and for sure, you know, and all right, Christopher, no worries. Thanks for checking in, and hopefully we'll see you later on this evening. You know, and so there's always that question of, like, what do you get people? And so for me, it's always a nice opportunity to print my work and give that to my family members. So to make a long story excruciating, what I have been up to recently, in addition to a few other things, is I've been spending a little bit of time printing. And one of the things that I found is that this time of the year there are a lot of sales going on. A lot of companies are offering discounts on printed work, and so you can upload photos, you can print stuff, and you can, you know, get it framed, you can have all that stuff done, you know, to your specifications with fairly little time involved. And so what I want to propose for our 4th photo challenge is this is going to be something a little bit different. We're going to take a little bit longer to do this, and I purposely planned this photo challenge this way, was because I didn't want to, I want to give myself space to actually do other things over the holidays rather than like be constantly making videos. I do have some videos in the queue that I'm going to be making over the holiday. But I'm also going to be, you know, spending time with my family and kind of regrouping and getting ready to go into the next semester. So I wanted to have something that would be a little bit more meaty. And since I've been spending so much time printing, what I wanted to do was, as a challenge, challenge you guys to, and girls, to print 3 photos minimum. Like, make nice prints that are bigger than like a postcard size, something that requires a little bit, something that you would be able to hang on a wall somewhere. To whatever extent you want to do that, how fancy you want to get, that is up to you. But then I would like for us to post photos of those prints that we're getting made with the hashtag LV Photo Challenge, and I will link that down below in the show description, on Twitter, on Instagram. And it's a nice opportunity for us to kind of come together and see what we are collectively doing in the process that printing takes for all of us. And I think there is really something to the idea that a photograph doesn't really reach its final destination until it is actually printed, until it comes into the world on a piece of paper of some sort, and it actually lives in a physical space and dimension. And I have many, many gigabytes and possibly even terabytes of photos that I have that I love, but I don't get to interact with them a lot, except for when I'm, you know, going through my archive to put in more photos, and I run across an album or a shoot that I did, and I think to myself, man, that was cool, and I look through those, I'm like, yeah, those are some good photos. I'm happy about those. I like them, and so that's always inspired me to print a lot. And so what I would like to do is I would like to, you know, put that challenge out there to you all, and to take 3 photos and specifically make 3 photographs and, you know, talk a little bit about what that process is like for you, how you chose the photos that you chose, and what it is that you like about them, and any significance that goes along with the photographs. Last year, I didn't, well, I'm always printing around the holidays. I have this this is my thumbnail. I made this photograph in Oman with Osama bin Laden's cousin. Like, literally, he looks exactly like bin Laden. And kind of an interesting photograph that I didn't expect to be interesting, but I wound up, my wife liked it so much, I got it printed for her. And now it's, you know, hanging in the bedroom, and so I have bin Laden's cousin drinking coffee and leering at me from the wall every time, you know, I go in and out of the room. But it's a nice photo. I enjoy it, and you know, you never know a lot of times when you this print is I want to say it's like a medium size print. It's like 16 by 24. The actual printed area is probably like 12 by 16 or something like that, but the entirety of the shot is about 16 by 24. And I got my prints done on society6.com, which I use their website to actually sell my prints, but I also order my own prints obviously without any markup. Hey, Brian Mercado checking in. Good to have you here tonight, Brian. I will print my own stuff for myself and for my family without the markup, obviously, you know, around the holidays, and I'll use that because I've been really happy with their prices, and I've been really happy with their print quality. And for those of you who have, who are photographers watching this, and you have an archive of images, it never hurts to put them up on a site like Society6. And there are some others that are some good options for printing, but I like it because you can sell to other folks that are interested, but you also don't have to. And you can make use of their printing to get your own work for your own self. And so every year, I wind up doing this, and I'm still trying to determine what exactly I want to print this year, because this has been kind of a pivotal year for me. I made a lot of big decisions, changed my life a lot, and there's so many pictures that I want to print, and they're not really cheap. To do that, even just a print without a frame, if you get one of the smaller sizes, runs you almost $20. So not cheap, but I think in some ways that helps. It makes the editorial process a little bit more serious, because when you're printing with skin in the game, you have to be really critical about the photos that you're going to go to the mat for and that you're going to get printed versus the ones that are like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I'll maybe make that background on my phone at some point, but that's not going to be hanging on my wall. I'm not going to, make a 28-inch print of that photo. And so that's one of the things that I've been working on the last couple of days. And I'm hoping that you guys will participate in that challenge, and it would be nice to do that. And we've done a few photo challenges up till this point over the last few weeks. Of course, like I mentioned, since I've been wrapping up the semester, I haven't been doing the photo challenges as much, but I figured this would be a nice thing to do, give everybody a little bit of time to work on this, and hopefully, regroup around the new year. And I also like the printing process, and I think that it's a good thing to have as a photo challenge, because of the fact that it is something that makes us reflect. And while I've seen a lot of, posts on Instagram, the top 9 most liked posts of 2017 and the 2017 rewind videos on YouTube and like all of these different things, for me, the ability to go back through and say, I'm going to pick a handful of images, I'm going to get them printed, I'm going to hang them up. It is a good opportunity for me to really go back through my year and reflect and see what I did and what I liked and kind of what direction that I want to go in the coming year with my work. King Yuzi says Society6 and Redbubble are expensive for your own prints. Actual print sites are cheaper. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that, Yusuf. I know that I've used Whitewall, which is a real print site, and they're beautiful. They do beautiful work, but their prints, even unframed prints, are incredibly expensive there. Again, it depends on the paper that you get, but it is pretty close. And to me, and it might be a little bit different because I know you're in the UK, they might have different prices with shipping and all. That stuff might be a little different. And the other thing too is that Society6 always has discounts, like they're, especially in the month of pretty much November and December, it's almost all 25, 35% off almost all the time. They have all these sales that are, for the next 24 hours, it's like 25% off. And then the next day they have another sale with a different name for 25% off that allows you to get a little bit of a break on stuff. But that said, printing one way or the other, even if you get your own printer, that can be a really good option. I have not done that yet. I don't have space for a printer, and you may be able to recognize that I am coming to you from the closet here in, I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm not at my dad's place where I live during the year when I'm going to school. And excuse me a second, I have a special guest. Hello, Lilo. You want to come and say hi? Here, you gotta be very careful. Okay, you gotta get down low. Go underneath. Okay. What? Okay. What are we doing here? Oh boy. So, Lilo has Moana book, and Daddy is making a video right now, sweetie. Say hi. You want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
You want to tell them about how you like taking pictures?
I like taking pictures.
See?
Yeah.
King Yuzi said hi, everybody.
Hi.
Everybody said hi. Now, do you need to... Is Mama going to put you to bed?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. I'll come tuck you in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to finish with this, all right? Okay?
What is this?
Okay. You're going to have to go have Mama read you the book, okay? I love you.
Mama?
I love you. Hey, watch it. Okay, go ahead.
Mama.
Getting rave reviews. Everybody thinks you're adorable, sweetie. All right. Good night, sweetie. I'll come get you in a little bit, okay? So anyways, yeah, that's one of the joys of parenting and doing this stuff at the same time, which is another reason why I am always printing everything and always printing stuff, because it's a good reminder of, you know, the tangible value of having all of these memories preserved along the way. And you know, there are so many opportunities that we have to make photographs and then print them, and you know, it's very easy to overlook those opportunities. Actually, I've been doing a series on Instagram over the last couple of days, because I finished with a you know, documentary project, or one episode of the documentary project that I'm working on, and you know, there's kind of the temptation that I need to go from like one episode right into the other, and everything has to be very much, you know, hi, sweetie.
Back again.
Okay, you're back again.
I have fun having school every.
You had fun at school?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. There's a tendency to want to, you know, always push your work forward in a very linear pattern, where you're always trying to go from one project directly into the next project. Excuse me. And so I actually decided to just kind of take a little break and do like a little informal series just about, you know, family, because it's the holidays. And one of the things that I'm doing over the holidays is, sweetie, you need to go to bed, okay? Go ahead. Don't bump the mic. Go down, under the wire. Little obstacle course here. Don't bump the tripod. It's a very small closet, believe it or not. You know, so I've been taking advantage of this time to do a little bit of a series about, you know, shooting family, and the ways that has sort of impacted me, and the ways that that's impacted my photography, because it's, you know, given me a really good opportunity to have a different way to interact with people that I care about, you know. And anyways, printing, family, all of that good stuff. That is where I'm at, and that's kind of what I have going on at this point. Want to share with you a little bit about what I have coming up in the next couple of videos. I am not done harping on the Fuji X-E3. I am going to be going on about that a little bit more, having a video, kind of my love-hate video that I like to do, that's sure to irritate some people that get really offended when you make any critical comments about a camera. And I do love the X-E3. That's a great camera. I've been enjoying it a whole bunch. And the other night, I took it out to shoot waterfalls. And I did some night photography. It was like 20 degrees, icy, on the side of a river, and I spent a couple hours out there, and it was pretty miserable. Shooting, like the shooting part of it was miserable just because it was so cold, but it was a really, really cool opportunity to put the camera through some paces, get some shots that I was really excited about, test a handful of different lenses. I took out the 18mm pancake lens, which everybody hates on this lens a ton. And so I kind of have this desire. I don't know exactly why. I think to a certain extent I'm a little bit of a contrarian. And when I hear people bag on lenses and say, oh, this lens sucks, it's not sharp enough, or it's too this or that, I automatically want to go out there and see if it really is that bad. And I'm still in the process of editing that together, but I have to say that the 18mm lens, I've been really, really surprisingly pleased with it. And I say surprisingly because, you know, everything that I heard from most people who were vocal about that lens was that it's just awful, and that I should, you know, basically use it as a hockey puck and just, like, you know, get rid of it. And I've been really pleasantly surprised with it. Now, to be fair, you know, I suppose that since this was one of their first lenses for the X series, it is very possible that, you know, the quality control might not have been up to par, and some copies of the lens may be bad or less good. But honestly, if this and the 27 are the two, which I have both, and I was prompted to get both. I never would have even thought to get both with the XT2, but it was like using the XE3. It's a little fun camera, and I want something that's going to be, you know, make the camera almost pocketable. Made me willing to overlook the fact that most people hate on these lenses. And what I found is that, you know, if these are the worst lenses that Fuji makes, then hey, you know, good on them, and good for us that get to use them. Because they're really outstanding. The 18 and the 27, and yeah, they're both on the small side. The 27 is a little pancake. It's a weird focal length. Well, I have, and this one is, the 18 has like the, so the 18 is pretty small. When you see it kind of side by side, it's just with the lens hood on it, it's a little bit taller, and I like the lens hood. It's the, you know, square hipster looking, you know, crushed Coke can, I guess they call it, the square lens hood. Big fan of that. It's weird focal length. The 18 is not a weird focal length. I actually feel like that's a really easy focal length to work with. It's wide, but it's not too wide, and it's a pretty fast lens, and it's also super light. It's lighter than just about all the other. It's even lighter than the 23 and the 35. Like, it's a super light little lens. The 27 is just a little bit on the funny side. Like, it's always a little bit too wide or a little bit too close, but I suspect that a lot of that has to do with just it's a learning curve, you know, where I have to learn how to shoot that, and I have to learn how to see at that focal length is really what it comes down to, because I think a lot of it is just training your eye for a new lens, and it takes some time and trial and error to get that down, which I haven't gotten that yet for the 27. I got a question, I think that was Craig, and I'm going to actually get the question or the chat here on my computer so that I don't have to be bumping the whatchamacallit, the phone to do this, because I'm still on a fairly low-tech streaming setup since I am going back and forth. Craig asked if the XE3 viewfinder is really that bad. Yes, it is pretty bad. And again, it's bad by comparison, I guess you could say. I don't know whether it's really that bad compared to other cameras, because I mean, I haven't used any other cameras for a while with the exception of the GH5, and the GH5 has a massive viewfinder. I mean, I can almost hold the camera, you know, 6 inches away from my face and still look through the viewfinder and see very clearly what's going on. The GH5 is brilliant. And also, it's hard to say too, because by comparison, you know, the XT2 has a really, really outstanding viewfinder. And so, you know, it may just be that the other ones are really good, and that the XE3 is not that bad, you know. But we'll have to make some additional comparisons. I mean, what I found comparing it to the X100F is that the 100F has a very similarly sized viewfinder, but the fact that it has a better implementation, the ergonomics are better, and you know, there's that little plastic eyepiece there that enables, you know, you keep out the ambient light. That makes a really big difference in the way that it functions. So I would say that, you know, it depends on where you're coming from with viewfinders, how tolerant you are. If you're coming from like the XT2, if you're coming from the XT1, even camera with a really big bright viewfinder, and you rely on a viewfinder a lot, I would say that could be a thorn in your flesh. And I believe that a lot of this stuff, you know, you can work around it. I think that a lot of the way that we shoot and the things that we look for in cameras, I think a lot of that is self-imposed based on what we're used to shooting with, and then we get trained in a certain mode of operating, and we look to kind of maintain or continue those things. I think a lot of times very useful features initially can feel like a burden. And I know that's been my experience shooting the XE3 to start with, is the touchscreen. at first was just really burdensome and annoying, and I just kind of wished I had a D-pad. However, the other night when I was out there under a bridge like an insane homeless person, worrying about cops showing up and like macing me for for being shady underneath a bridge, and it being 20 degrees out, and having my gloves on and fumbling around with a video camera while I'm taking stills, while I'm next to like a waterfall that's like spraying, and I'm, the whole thing, it was very involved. And you'll get a feel for that once I get that vlog edited and put together for you. But being there and having the simplicity of not having a D-pad, having only like 3 buttons, what is it, 3 buttons, yeah, that you can really touch, it simplified the whole process of shooting a great deal, especially with gloves on. And I was really happy to only be using the joystick and 3 buttons pretty much. So that minimalist layout that initially felt kind of clunky to me because the touchscreen takes away the need for the D-pad, I was prepared to not like it when I started. That's kind of the way that I went into it, was skeptical. And I think this is true for a lot of Fuji shooters who are very traditional in most cases, and like Fuji has attracted a market of people who typically are like photo loyalists, who are like, we're not those damn video people, like, we're not, whatever, it's just kind of people who plant their flag in the ground very firmly on the photo side of things, and don't care to even try the video features, but when you actually try it and you give a camera a chance to reshape the way that you think about stuff and the way that you operate, instead of fighting the camera, you say, okay, how is this camera meant to be used? How can I go with the camera in the direction that it wants to take me, and see if maybe the engineers were onto something, if they had a good idea. And turns out, yeah, they did. It's nice. So I always have a hard time giving black and white answers about whether or not something is really bad or useful. But let's see. Tiff, you said you got a chance to hold the XE3. What did you think about it? Did you like the way that it felt? Was it too small? Was it too big? Was it disappointing? How did you like it compared to the XT2? Because I know you're an XT2 owner, and I think that's an interesting comparison. I mean, I've made some comparison comments in some of the videos that I've done, but that's all from memory because I haven't actually had the two cameras directly side by side. I felt like, it's sort of like an XT2 Lite. It feels like the XT2. It reminds me of it a lot, but it also feels a little bit more fun. And I like the fact that it's a little bit smaller too. And I like I like everything about it. To be fair, I've also come a long way in my perception of the XT2, and what I'm looking for in a camera has changed a lot in the last year, believe it or not, because I really started making these videos about a year ago. I went to Standing Rock in North Dakota. I bought the XT2. I needed an excuse to buy the XT2. And I was like, yeah, I'm going out to this protest. I'm going to go photograph it, and I'm going to, have a new camera so that I can be, really on the down low. Because all I had was like a big DSLR at that point, and I felt like, that would be a good reason for me to buy the XT2, which I had been ogling for quite a while since I first heard that they were like planning on announcing it. I really wanted the XT2, and I had sort of unrealistic expectations, being perfectly honest, which I think is, good to have high expectations of camera manufacturers, but it wasn't anything, I wanted one camera to do everything, and the XT2 just was not that, although on paper it looked like it certainly should have been that. And so now I've kind of gotten to a point where I've grown comfortable with the idea that the GH5 is my video camera. I know that I can do still images with the GH5 if I need to, but I would much prefer to use the Fuji system for still photos, because I just like the way that it feels, and it just doesn't get in my way the same way, and I can think in a much more linear fashion when I'm using the Fuji system and their lenses, and I just absolutely love it. So, coming to terms with that fact that, there isn't really, at this point anyways, there isn't a one camera, a single camera to rule them all, at least not in the same way, right? Like in the same time and space, like you need to have different cameras for different things, and that's just kind of the way it is. And now that I've come to that, come to terms with that, I think that I probably would have a different feeling about the X-T2 if I were to have it again. Although at the end of the day, I have everything, just about everything that I really wanted out of the X-T2, but I have it at, half of the price. So I feel like it was a really good learning experience for me to have the X-T2, and also a really, it was a really nice camera, but it was probably a little bit more camera than I needed, especially since I wound up bailing on shooting professionally. So Tiff said, comparing the X-T2 to the X-E3, when I held it for a minute, I automatically thought, wow, if they could make the X-T2 with all that it has this size, it would really have arrived. For my lady hands, it was extremely nice. It would definitely be a great second camera if I chose to make Fuji my only choice. Very cool. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. My daughter, who some of you may have seen in here, she kind of slightly more than photobombed me. She video bombed me. She does that sometimes, like where she's not in bed and I start the live stream and she like, hey Peter, the man who is responsible for egging me on in my gear acquisition syndrome, and who I have to thank for my getting the XE3. Good to have you here. I felt basically the same way, Tiff, what you said about the XE3 versus the T2. It's just small, really comfortable, and I mean, I would assume that my hands are probably bigger than yours, but and my daughter could actually hold this camera. She legitimately took pictures with this camera. Of course, I was like, over instructing her and making sure that she didn't drop it or throw it, or she loves to, like, whenever I come near her with the camera, of course the first thing she does is goes right for the lens, and just gives me nightmares because like fingerprints on the lens, that's just obviously that drives me bananas. But she was able to actually handle that camera and take pictures with it, which I thought was really impressive. I mean, granted, she's a 3-year-old, but she's got big hands for a 3-year-old, so I don't know where that lands her. But, and notwithstanding, I've not felt like it was uncomfortable in my hands, which are, I have large hands even for a man. So it's interesting that it's almost like when you get inside of a compact car and you have a lot of legroom, you're kind of like, wow, this car is tiny, but I feel really comfortable sitting in it. Like the Honda Fit, for example. If anybody has any experience with the Honda Fit, I love those cars. I don't personally own one, although I love tiny little cars. Right now I'm driving a 4Runner, but that's really just a leftover from when we were living in the trailer, and we had to have a V6 to pull the trailer around. But I've always loved tiny little cars, not only for the economy, but I just like smaller spaces. I'm a weirdo like that. So I felt really like they did a really good job with the design and the layout of the XE3, and some people are a little butthurt about the technology, the touch technology, that it's it's a little bit antiquated. It's definitely not on the same level. Hey Ryan Tanaka, good to see you here. The touch technology on the XE3 is definitely not on the same level as that of the iPhone or even the Panasonic cameras. I can't speak to the Sony cameras and what level of touch technology they have in their cameras, but it could use some improvement, and I think they know that, and I think they will. But Tiff says, it's really just right, referring to the XE3. Only somewhat of a complaint would be that I still need the thumb grip. The side thumb grip is not as comfortable as the Sony a6000, but it's nowhere near a deal breaker. Okay. And I don't know enough about the a6000 to make that direct comparison, but that sounds reasonable, although compared to the XT2, I really love the fact that the thumb grip is as prominent as it is even on this, comparatively. So I've been really happy to see that as well. So it's nice. I feel like I've kind of reached a good point with my cameras and my systems to where And I'm not just saying this. I'm not going to make a video about this anymore, because every time I make a video with some sort of declarative statement that I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do that, then, like, you know, last time I made a video about no more new gear, and then, like, you know, 6 weeks later, I'm doing, you know, like, oh, hey guys, I got the XE3, you know. So it's a little bit, I don't want to go that far, but I will say that I feel like I'm really happy with the XE3 at this point. It's giving me pretty much everything that I need, and there are still definitely things that I could improve, or that I hope they improve, that could be better about this camera. It's not like, you know, it's not like some idealistic love affair with this camera that it's just so sexy. It's like, no, I know, you know, this camera, I've had a chance to smell its morning breath a little bit, and I'm still in love. You know, it's past that test for me, anyways. I'm still pretty. Yeah, that's right. No, I say no more promises, Peter. Next video, I'll probably do a promise video about what I'm going to promise. I don't know. That may happen. Actually, my next couple of videos, I'm going to be still unpacking my experience with the XE3, night photography, and getting out and shooting in the cold with it. And is really super impressive. The battery life too, that's another thing I have to say. Like, I was really, like, I had a whole round of criticisms that I anticipated, because, like, I kind of wanted to get the XE3 and bag on it and make a bunch of critical reviews and tell everybody how much I hated it, get everybody to be angry. I mean, this is, not that I went into it with a completely preconceived notion, but this is what I honestly anticipated. I figured the touch technology would be really bad, it would not be nearly as useful as everyone thought, and it would be, like, really gimmicky, and that I would hate it, and that it would just, I don't know why I thought that, but that was just my impression of it, honestly. And to be fair, the marketing surrounding the XE3, I haven't really seen that much from Fuji. Like, I follow them on all the different social media channels. Like, all they ever do is retweet Brian Minier and, like, this one photo that he has taken, you know, a nice photo of a guy standing on a bridge, and they just keep retweeting it, and are like, oh, don't you wish you could be like Brian Minier and take this, like, I think that's how you say his name, and nothing against Brian at all. I think his photographs are spectacular, and I'm sure he's got like 1 billion more followers than I do, and you know, he's a Fuji X photographer and all that stuff, whereas I am just a guy in a closet with some opinions and a couple of friends that, you know, you guys check in with me, which I appreciate. But yeah, I feel like their marketing for the XE3 was not super robust, at least not at this point. Maybe they're waiting to get the kinks out before that happens. And so I kind of was prepared for it to be a little bit gimmicky, but the battery life is outstanding, especially in the cold, 20 degrees. And I mean, I was shooting 30 to 60 second exposures, like, right along for an hour and a half, and I only knocked off like 20-25% of the battery, which I thought was really impressive, because I wasn't just shooting long exposures, I was also doing like image review and focus checking and like a bunch of other things. Yes, Craig Hawkins for the win. I am in a closet, and Yusuf, you are not completely wrong about the fuzzy wallpaper thing. I'm actually in the same closet that I've been in before, but every time I'm in the closet, everybody makes fun of me, and I have to explain why I'm in a closet, because, you know, I live in two places, and where I make most of my videos is at my dad's, where I live when I'm going to school, and when I'm here with my family, the space that I have is much less, and so I'm actually in my wife's closet. And so rather than give you a look at all of her clothing, I kind of put that up to kind of, you know, make a little bit of a fix as much as I could. And I didn't get the lighting quite right, and so it looks like I'm, you know, coming to you from a closet that's on the surface of the sun. But I'm not. I am here in Massachusetts, and it is really, really cold. Oh, good evening, Eddie. I meant to greet you earlier, and I saw that you're getting out in the cold. That's really good. And I am very hopeful that I'm going to be getting out in the cold at some point, too, although I'm enjoying not being in the cold so much. And right now, I'm trying to make up my mind if I want to go to Dubai. this winter and visit my father-in-law over Christmas break or not. And I know that may sound like a little bit of a privileged statement to make, for lack of a better term. I hate that whatever. I'm not gonna steer things in the political vein this evening, but basically my objection to going to the Middle East this time is that because I have to come back for school, it would be a short trip. It would be like probably 7 days max. Actually 6 days, 5 or 6 days is probably what it would be. And so that would not really be enough time for me to have very much, like whenever you fly east, I always wind up with much worse jet lag than when I fly west. So it's like a 12-hour flight, and the last time that I went there, it took about 3 to 5 days to really get over the jet lag and feel like a human being again. And basically what would happen is I would get there, spend 3 days sleeping, get over the jet lag, and then have to come back and start classes, and then be jet lagged again on the other side of things. So I would have, like, you know, a 1-day window in the middle where I would be worth anything. But on the other hand, it would be a great way to relax. So I am thinking about that as an opportunity to get out of the cold a little bit. The other alternative is I might go to Alaska, which kind of go in the opposite direction because I want to photograph the northern lights. And I used to live in Alaska for a year when I was in high school. Yeah, Peter, the cocaine option is one that I might consider if I were going to a different country than than Dubai. From what I hear, I mean, I don't think it's as bad as Singapore with what they do if they catch you with cocaine. But Singapore, I believe you get executed if you have cocaine. Dubai, I don't know exactly what they do if you have cocaine, but my understanding is they are not super tolerant of cocaine and, you know, illicit drug use. They are. The funny thing is that everybody always, you know, because a lot of the social political stuff, a lot of people look at the Middle East as being in opposition to a lot of how to say this. And I want to say this so that I can actually get it right. I'm not trying to. I'm not necessarily just worried about, you know, offending somebody. But the bottom line is that, like, a lot of the people who are, you know, like, they're very, very conservative, I guess, is in a lot of ways. They share a lot of very similar values with what, you know, in the States is typically like the conservative Christian side of things, which I'm personally, as a conservative Christian, libertarian Christian, let's just say, I'm comfortable with it. I think it's kind of interesting and ironic, and I actually felt in a lot of ways very, very comfortable in Dubai, which is, you know, they're not big on people doing drugs and being offensive and rude and all that stuff. Like, if you give somebody the finger over there, you will get deported or what have you. Which is, you know, seems excessive to me, even as somebody who doesn't typically give people. I almost never give people the finger, because anytime I think to give somebody the finger, it's always like the moment has passed and then it's too late, you know. I must be missing some comments. Tiff says, ever since my kidnap attempt in Israel when I was younger, I've not been interested in going back that way. Wow. I did not know that. You should be doing a live stream, and I should be asking you questions, because that sounds like quite an interesting story. Good evening, Queen of San Joaquin. The photo challenge, and it's at the beginning of the video too, if you want to go back and watch it in a little more detail. But in short, the photo challenge is to make 3 prints that are hangable. You know, frame of reference, no pun intended. Yeah, I used my picture here. One of the pictures that I shot in the spring, and this isn't one of the shots that I'm counting as part of this challenge, but I just wanted to have a prop to work with, and you know, wanted to challenge you guys and gals to print your work, especially at this time of year when we're kind of reflecting on what we have shot and looking at what we want to shoot for the year coming up. And regardless what you shot it with or how great you think it is, to go back through your work and find some meaning that is worth finalizing and putting into a finished format and printing and hanging. And then share that experience, what, pictures of your prints, I think, is what I would like to see and what I'm going to be doing. But however you guys want to do that, and of course use the hashtag. So if the size of this photo is a 16 by 24, the printed area is probably like 12 by 16, somewhere in that neighborhood, but the actual print and the frame is like 16 by 24, which is a nice size. I like it. I'm always tempted to go a little bit bigger, but with the frames and all that stuff, I may be getting some larger prints for myself this year, just because I want to just try it out. I want to see how big I can get my photos to print. But yeah, that's photo challenge number 4, and I'm not gonna try to rush this one through. We're gonna probably take it into the new year before working on any other photo challenges, because I want to give everybody time to get, for shipping and to kind of go through a little bit of the editorial process and to post that up. This is sort of a casual year-end photo challenge to wrap things up. I'm also working on a photo book for my patrons too, but that will go out probably earlier in the year. Yeah, Peter, I miss doing the challenges too. Honestly, I really enjoyed that. There are certain times of the year for me when everything is kind of, my time commitments get a little bit bottlenecked. And so I have to, I still have to grade my tests for one of the classes that I was teaching, so I'll probably do that this weekend now that the semester is over. I wanted to kind of get first things done first, and then go from there and kind of ramp into doing more photo challenges too. So I think that would be cool. Also would be interested in hearing what you guys are working on and or what you are, struggling with, or ideas that you guys have, because I think it would be cool to try to use that as springboards for different ideas of things to photograph and different ways to approach the photo challenge for in the coming year, to be able to do that. So pardon me while I'm a bit of a diet soda mixologist. This is fudge soda, chocolate soda, honestly, and vanilla seltzer water, and no sugar, and it does not suck. It's good. So that's about all I have this evening for you guys. Love to kick it over to you guys in the chat. If there are questions that you have, comments, things you want to discuss, paths that you want to go down, I will do any of that. Peter says, I'm struggling with making printable stills from video. All my clients ask for it. That's very interesting. Why are they asking for printable stills from the video? And what's the problem with those prints? Is it that they are, are they not sharp enough? Is the resolution not high enough? I would think that you should be able to get pretty close, depending on the size of the print, especially if you're shooting 4K, which I believe you've said that you shoot mostly 4K. I know that Panasonic, at least, they're trying to resolve some of that with the 6K photo mode and stuff like that, but I don't know that really replaces or would actually work as a stand-in for video. But yeah, that's something that I honestly don't have much experience with personally, because most of what I've done, most of what I have done with with stills out of my video, it's just like video thumbnails, and a lot of times I can control what that's going to be, and I'll pick a frame based on the motion blur, because that was the other thing I was thinking too, is that with motion blur, a lot of times that's going to be tricky, especially if if you have moving subjects. The only other thing that I would say is maybe if you could ask them to run through a scene an extra time, and maybe just switch it out of video. And I'm not sure exactly who or what you're shooting, Peter, but if it's possible with certain things to be able to repeat different scenes and just kind of shoot it with stills and then shoot it in video and kind of split the two, the two mediums from each other. You know, that, I mean, which I'm assuming you're probably having to do something like that, and you probably want to avoid having to do that, which I understand. That makes sense. I don't know if I have a better solution though than that for this, but if you find one, I would certainly be interested to hear it, because I'm sure there have to be other people who are dealing with that. You know. Yusuf says, I'm building costumes for a set of shoots about mental health states. Depression is represented by a tall raven-like figure standing behind someone holding them back from life. Sadness, loneliness, happiness, and regret. That sounds super interesting. I'd be really interested to see and hear more about that as as that comes to fruition. I'm assuming this is your project, or is this a project you're working on for somebody else? I mean, I those kind of projects are right up my alley. Take care, Queen of San Joaquin. I'm sorry I did not see you. I'm kind of going back and forth between the computer and the screen here, trying to keep everything straight. Have a good evening, and thanks for stopping and checking in. Okay, cool. So that's a project that you guys are doing. That's really neat. What motivated, kind of, where'd you get the idea for that project? Sounds like there may be somewhat of a story there. And of course, anytime that there's a story behind it, if you can work that in, of course, that makes it, I think that makes the work more meaningful to you, if nothing else to you. And then hopefully, I think other people can really take that meaning out of it too, when it means more to you. Of course, that's been my experience, and a lot of the work that I have done has been fairly esoteric, but I've felt like the extent to which it's captured other people, when I've done something that has been moderately successful, it's always based around the fact that it means a lot to me first, and I'm looking at it from that perspective and putting my commentary in there. So hopefully that's something that you guys will be able to do, because mental health, and even if it's not mental health from like a clinical perspective, but just the discussion of emotional states and the way our minds work and the way that we feel. And the way that we deal and interact with those feelings is super, super important, and it's good to have different people taking a different look at that stuff. That's really cool. Tiff says, it's not photo related, but I'm trying to write 4 small scripts for 4 skits I'd like to put up on YouTube and start a web series. It's my attempt at comedy. That sounds awesome. Or is this like a series that you're doing yourself? Are you gonna like shoot it and be in it, or are you like writing and shooting for somebody else and you're just kind of like behind the camera? Is this like I'm curious how it's going to be implemented, or maybe you don't have that determined, and at this point you're just writing the script. That could be too. I've found that like it's really intimidating to write stuff, because when you start writing stuff, it feels very committing and very final, and I'm always afraid to do it. But I always feel like even in my videos, when I write stuff, even just like notes as opposed to like full-on scripts, when I make those notes, I feel like it always really helps me a lot, the more forethought and planning I put into it. So I can only empathize a very little bit with what you're going through if you're actually writing a full-on script. Actually, that's not true. I have done a little bit of scripting, but usually, like with my documentary stuff, I'm doing a script for the narration part of things, and that's actually something that I'm going to be doing, because I have a couple more documentary projects that I'm still working on, and that's always one of the big things that acts sort of as a barrier for me, is having to write the narrative portion, because I hate having to write a script for myself. It's tough to do. King Yusuf says, we both experienced the mentioned mental states at one point or another. Nearly everyone has. It's not for a cause of any kind, but just an exercise in self-expression. Very cool. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Yusuf, to see where that goes, and see what could come out of that, because a lot of times that, even if it doesn't turn into anything for a cause, even if you expressly don't want it to be for a cause and you just want it to be for yourself, I think that other people still benefit from it much more than what you probably would anticipate. because it always surprises me how that stuff works. You know, there's always people that are connected to things. A lot of times it's stuff that you don't even necessarily think about that you know, other people really gain the most benefit from. So glad that you are doing that. And it's a good exercise, like you said, it's a good exercise in self-expression and having that framework to kind of build something into. Tiff says, writing and shooting for my own project. Got friends who want to be in the work. That's awesome too. I haven't yet. That's a bridge too far for me. I haven't done anything like that where I'm, you know, I haven't done anything where I've actually gotten other people, where I've shot anything that's narrative. I've always, you know, I do a little bit of run and gun stuff with the documentary work, but that's always very candid. There's not usually a lot of that is like acting related, where I have to direct people or anything like that. It's always very much, you know, just kind of capturing whatever is actually happening and just kind of being very much fly on the wall with the camera. And when you're writing a script and you have to direct people and you have like a vision for the way it's coming out, like that's a totally different thing. I got a lot of respect for that, because that is way outside my wheelhouse, what I've done, but I think that's really cool. So King Yuzi says, this is my first foray into fine art, intentional fine art photography, which is really, really neat. That's something that I have not, also another area that I have not delved too deeply. And that's one of the reasons why I love having these chats with you guys, because I feel like I get to live a little bit vicariously through what I see you guys working on. And that inspires me and informs me as well, kind of with my own work, and kind of overcoming that, you know, the resistance, the whole, you know, putting stuff off and planning and just so that you can feel comfortable like you're doing something while you're not actually doing anything. I've kind of been in that phase on a number of projects for a while, and so I'm hoping to kind of make some headway and really just kind of break things open a little bit over the holidays and be able to make that make some changes there. You know, not necessarily like a New Year's resolution type of thing, but just take advantage of having a little bit of free time to be able to focus and to do that stuff. I think that would be really cool as well. Cool. Well, it has been 56 minutes and change. I do not have any other questions. Or I shouldn't say questions. I should say I don't have any other things that I had to discuss this evening. I would like to keep this conversation going. I'm going to try to do these live streams continuing on Fridays. That's kind of my plan at this point, is do live streams on Fridays. But I would, well, I think most of you guys already follow me on Twitter or on Instagram. That's usually where I put up messages for these live streams. And you know, part of the reason too, I want to be really forthright, since I have all three of you still tuned in. You know, a lot of times when I don't do a live stream, it's because I honestly don't have anything to say. And I could just go on and, you know, do something with Fuji, you know, insert camera name in the title and just rattle off stuff about gear. But, you know, there are some times over the last couple of weeks where I just really don't have a great deal of stuff to say. And so that does impact what I do. And like, I feel bad when I don't do live streams, but at the same time, I also feel bad when I'm doing a live stream and it's not a really good live stream, because there's not really much point. You know, I mean, I can, you know, if I open my mouth and say words, there's a good chance that a high percentage of those words will be somewhat relevant to photography, just, you know, process of elimination, because who I am and what I like. But I also want to avoid just, you know, kind of the, and I'm not, you know, saying this to bag on any other photographers who do live streams that are kind of all over the place. You know, I like to, you know, I like to be able to have a little bit of a point to what I'm doing, and not just, yeah, I hope that makes sense. I always feel like I trip all over myself when I'm doing live streams too, which is another thing. Like, even like my intro is just like, you know, kind of crazy. Cool. Well, I appreciate that, Tiff. I appreciate your understanding, where I'm coming from. I feel like a lot of people, I have people that are like, they'll watch these videos after the fact and they'll be like, oh, well, can you put timestamps on these? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about 90% of the time when I'm live streaming. Like, I know roughly what I want to talk about for the first 5 minutes, but then, like, I'll get lost while I'm doing the intro. I'll screw that up, and then I'll wind up, like, way away from the point that I really wanted to start off talking about, and then I have to, like, kind of turn things around, and my daughter walks in, or, like, somebody checks in and asks me a question, and it's more interesting than what I was going to talk about. So instead of starting the video off with what the title is, I'm like, I start talking about the, what the question that I got, which is cool, too. Like, I like all of that stuff. Take care, Peter. If you are heading out, enjoy Star Wars. I gotta say, I'm not a, well, you'll have to let me know what the fuss is all about and how Star Wars is. I've never gotten bit by the Star Wars bug. Lord of the Rings, I've been just completely infested with that. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Peter. I thank you for that vote of confidence. I do like doing live streams, but I think part of the thing too is it's a little easier for me to do a live stream where I don't have like a specific topic. If I go into it and I'm just like, kind of let my hair down and, such as it is, let my hair down and, just speak off the cuff about whatever, that's kind of fun to do as well. But it's also kind of it's a little bit of a give and take because I like getting in here and having something that's going to bring value to people. And I hate the expression bring value, like, because I feel like that's way, way overused. Like, everybody's like, oh, there's so much value in this content. It's like Chase Jarvis always says that. And there's a couple of other, content creators and influencers that always use that term value, like value in the content. They bring you valuable content. Like, no, I don't know if any of this is valuable. It's just, hanging out and having a conversation, which may have valuable in it, but, yeah, that might be. Beautiful cinematography might have some value, but then at the same time, when you think about it, like, oh, I'm sorry, I just realized you were talking about Star Wars and not my rant about people calling content valuable when it probably isn't. Sorry. Yeah. That actually sounds really cool. I've never watched Star Wars from that perspective, and that could be worth rewatching it from that perspective, because I always watched it looking for entertainment, surprisingly, because that's what everybody does. But Lord of the Rings was another one that I couldn't get into for the longest time, but then once I started watching Lord of the Rings, it was like I was all in. Star Wars, I've tried desperately many times to watch Star Wars and really get into it and like it, and I just can't. I'm afflicted with the I can't like Star Wars condition. I don't have the gene to like Star Wars, unfortunately. So dark bacon and only one tin opener. It's not bad. I don't know what that is in reference to, Eddie. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. That makes me feel a little better, Tiff. I appreciate that confession that you've only seen the first Star Wars film completely. I have not ever seen, and I'm not trying to one up you here. I'm just trying to relate and empathize. I have never seen a complete Star Wars film all the way through, and it was never, I tried. I really honestly did try. Made a good effort with people who really liked it, who wanted to, they wanted to, facilitate my birth into the world of people who like Star Wars, and it just did not. It did not happen. Did not happen. Oh wow, Yusuf, your local indie cinema having a Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy showing on my birthday. Wow, happy birthday to you. I hope you get to go to that. And honestly, when is your birthday? Because I mean, to be fair, I have the extended version trilogy. I have that, and I used to watch it all the time. I haven't for a long time because I don't want to half-ass watching Lord of the Rings. Like, if I'm going to watch Lord of the Rings, I want to, like, marathon, just be, like, shut in and do nothing. Man, I won't be able to get over there by January 7th. a bummer. Otherwise, I was going to say if it was like in the springtime, maybe after the semester is over, I might see about getting tickets to come over there for that. And obviously, to, celebrate your birthday with you too, of course, and spend some time over in the UK. But yeah, like I always feel like, if I can't watch the full trilogy and just like really enjoy it, which obviously is impossible, and I don't feel that, as much as I love Lord of the Rings, I don't feel like it's appropriate for my 3-year-old daughter at this point to be watching that. And different people may feel differently about that, or some of you who don't have kids might think that if you had kids, you probably would be totally fine with them. And I always thought that too. And then now, it's like having a kid and being like, I don't know if I want to, have her watching this stuff. Even, at this point, I mean, when she's a little bit older, then we'll do like the trilogy thing, hopefully. But then, by the time she's older, then she won't want to hang out with me and watch movies with me either. So. Peter, I appreciate the heads up on The Empire Strikes Back, that is the best one. Maybe I should start there, and I will make a commitment to give it one more try, one last effort. I will try watching The Empire Strikes Back. I'm not going to promise when, and I'm not going to make a video that has anything about promises in the title about this, but I will, between you and me, a gentleman's agreement. Here's a virtual handshake for you, and I don't want to go too far with a virtual handshake because it just makes me realize how blown out the highlights are because my light is messed up. But yeah, I will make an effort to do that, and I look forward to hearing how you guys like this one, since I know that this is something that a lot of Star Wars fans have been really looking forward to for a while, and I've heard a lot about it, so I'm sure it's got to be good. One more thing before I go. Does anybody here like do anything with Bitcoin? Just wondering. I don't know if like this is a thing for other folks that have been doing. One of my friends is always telling me, he's like, "Yo, you need to make videos about Bitcoin," because I've gotten like really into Bitcoin, like everybody else in the world, in the last couple of months. I'm just curious if anybody here is as excited and invested as I am, which, to be fair, when I say invested in, I mean more emotionally invested than financially invested, because I feel like Bitcoin is super fun. Actually more Litecoin than Bitcoin for me at this point, but I'm kind of diversified in between like the 3 big cryptocurrencies, and I've been enjoying this whole thing a lot. And I only have one person, my friend Andrew, my best friend, actually, since I was like 7 years old. We do everything together, and yeah, we've really had a lot of fun because like can't talk to not that I can't talk to anybody else about it, but it's like I don't really have any outlet where it makes sense to talk about any of this stuff. But Litecoin has been really, really interesting. And I've been using Coinbase. It's an iOS mobile app to get on there and trade invest, I guess you can say. I got in at a good time on Litecoin, and again, not at a high dollar value, but just at a good margin. That's surprising, Tiff, that you haven't gotten the bug. I really thought, like, I was thinking to myself, if there's anybody that I know who I would expect to be really into Bitcoin, I was like, I bet I'm going to say something about this on Twitter, and Tiff's going to be like, oh yeah, like, how we're going to have this like secret Twitter Bitcoin connection where you're all into Bitcoin. I'm surprised. But I appreciate your well wishes for people who got into it earlier. I mean, there's tons of cryptocurrencies though, besides Bitcoin. And that's the thing, is like Litecoin is kind of silver to the Bitcoin gold. And so it has a much lower value, and it's also much more manageable. And I think that it can be something that might actually find more utility in the marketplace in a similar way to how, well, maybe not exactly parallel, but like kind of how like MySpace went and kind of opened the door up for Facebook, that I think Bitcoin might be opening the door for other cryptocurrencies that might be a little bit more useful. But I think the whole concept is really interesting and exciting, and it's cool to watch some of that stuff. Watch it grow, watch it work. Yeah, Litecoin is past 300. It was funny. I went to bed the other night. It was at $97, and I was like, maybe I'll just buy a little bit more before I go to bed. It might go up. So I made a fairly substantial buy for my purposes. I would consider it fairly substantial. I was just like, we'll see. And then I woke up the next morning, and I had a text message from my friend Andrew, who's my Bitcoin buddy, and my best friend actually, and Bitcoin buddy. And he's like, oh man, he's like, well, he's like, did you check Coinbase yet? You should check Litecoin. You're going to be pretty happy. And I woke up and it was like 350, and I was really happy that, because usually, I always joke with him, I buy high and I sell low. That's my trick to my investing. And I was happy. I did for once buy low, and I didn't sell it yet because I still think that there's more to go with it, but. I understand what you're saying, Tiff, as somebody who knows that world as a hacker, or somebody who is, I don't know if you called yourself a hacker, so I don't want to apply that epithet, but somebody who at least is hacker adjacent, it seems, by what you've expressed. I can understand why you would be a little bit more standoffish about that, but at the same time, I don't know. That makes sense, and I felt the same sense of skepticism initially, although not for any of the technical knowledge based reasons that I'm sure that you have under your belt. Mine were just general confusion, and so I've kind of overcome a little bit of the general confusion with some information, but not quite enough information to make me as informed a customer as yourself. And so I'm kind of in that sweet spot between so ignorant that I'm afraid and so informed that I'm afraid of it. And I'm kind of in that area where it's like, it seems like a good idea, like it could work. So that's where I'm at. And one of these days, if they shut my power off and I just, have to shut everything down and sell all of my cameras, the last of my cameras on eBay, well, then you'll know it was my poor decision-making skills, because, I am a little bit impulsive sometimes when it comes to this stuff, which could work out really well or not. Yeah, I agree, Yusuf, about it being the future of currency. I think there's definitely the argument to be made for that. I think that a lot of, what we use at this point, it's all fairly arbitrary. It's all backed up by nothing exactly. And yeah, it's just a matter of getting it to settle down a little bit more to the point where it can be stable enough to actually use as a currency. And again, maybe Bitcoin isn't the currency to do that. Maybe Bitcoin is going to open the door for one of these other currencies that would be more usable as an actual, currency of exchange. Or maybe, maybe that's the fun of it. It's like, maybe you only get paid, 3 or 4 Bitcoin a year, but you don't know what that Bitcoin is going to go up to. And so, you start off making $30,000 a year with your 2 Bitcoin. And then, by your 3rd year, nobody has to give you a raise. You're just getting, I'm not an economist, and I know I'm going to get in way over my head if I go too far down that path. But I do think that it's an interesting concept. I would like to, and I'm, literally invested in seeing where it goes now. Tiff says, I think that may be it. I saw when Bitcoin was starting, and there were other names that came, and it may be the confusion that stopped it from grabbing me. Admittedly, I do have a few people I follow who are trying to convince me, so I'm watching them. I think that, just the Litecoin and some of the other things have been really, I guess the way that I look at it, and again, I'm going to, reveal myself to be very uninformed as an economist, and, I bought a bunch of stock in GoPro last winter, and I don't know if anybody is financially involved there, but GoPro stock was like at one point really, really high. And then it dropped a whole bunch, and I was like, oh, I should probably buy a bunch because it's low, so I'll buy low, sell high. And then I realized after buying it that, they were still continuing to go down further, and that they were never going to ever come back up, ever, ever, ever. And the company was just like basically crap the bed. And so my financial opinions are just that, and are also unreliable as opinions go, even So don't do as I say or as I do. But one of the things that I look at with this is that, you know, Bitcoin has come this far in 8 years. So if it was something that was like a Ponzi scheme, I would feel like it. Yes, at least it was not stocks in EA. That is true. I saw that happen too. Although I still suspect that there's more hope for EA than there is for GoPro, because GoPro is just like, it's technology that nobody cares about anymore. It's like it had its heyday, and it's one of those things where it had that year when everybody had a GoPro and was like, oh man, GoPro is awesome, and now it's just one of those things that everybody's like, oh, do you remember like Chia Pets or something? Not exactly like Chia Pets, but kind of, you know. But the way I look at it is the fact that there is still so much confidence, and the confidence is growing even when it's after, you know. But yeah, it's, you know, after years, and even like you say, Peter, with those setbacks, with hacks and other things that have happened, it still is going great, and it is growing, and it's growing because there is, you know, consumers, like people trust it. They are interested in it. You know, there's a decent amount of confidence in that. So I think that that's something that really speaks well to the value of it. Oh, let's see. We have some dingleberries on here, and block. Goodbye. Wow, we got a whole bunch of people to block, which is nice. Let's block. Put user in timeout. Go away. Okay. Does anybody else want to ruin my monologue? Yeah, I agree, Peter. That's kind of the one thing that my friend Andrew and I have been talking about a lot, is that we're kind of waiting for it to get accepted as as a major currency like Amazon and stuff like that. But I think, you know, I forget what the name of the exchange is where you can, it's a gold exchange, like a precious metal company, and or the porn industry. Actually, yeah, I think that it's already, I mean, at least from what I have heard and a little bit of reading, like there are some people that are very much against Bitcoin from a moralistic perspective, because they said that if, like, you know, you're investing in Bitcoin, you're basically helping, you know, there's a lot of like humdrum and, like, you know, word on the street about it being some sort of like conspiracy, or like North Korea or Russian or Russia, like, or somebody subversive is trying to screw everybody in the U.S. and kind of suck all our money to fund other ulterior operations, and also like human trafficking and all that stuff, because a lot of, you know, dark web financial transactions are happening through Bitcoin, and that's supposed to be, yeah, like a Mr. Robot type of thing. Exactly. You know, that's something that, you know, seems to be fairly prevalent, and I don't know how much of that is actually true or just speculative. What I believe is that a lot of those rumors are being put out there because Trump actually said that he wants to investigate this whole thing. He wants to make a special committee to investigate cryptocurrencies and bitcoins, because he's suspicious that it's the North Koreans, which I don't know that that's the case, but I think that if there is one thing, I mean, you want to talk about the super rich, you know, I don't think that that's, because here's the thing, the super rich, it's like the whole conversation about economy and like the 1% is, most people incorrectly attribute 1%edness, like the 1%, as being that guy who can afford, you know, the big house and the nice car, who makes, you know, $300,000 a year. That's not the 1%. That's not even close to the 1%. You know, the 1% are like the big bankers who control all the currency, and they have so much power that, you know, whatever, you know, they don't really need any of that stuff. They control the industries that make all the stuff that they need. They don't really even need money. You know, they don't need to make money at that point. They just need to control the one, you know, they need to control the finances. And so, you know, you could see potentially, you know, cryptocurrencies and anything that is that independent, which basically gives everybody an out from having to participate in that rigged system that is controlled by a handful of people, literally that 1%, you know, there's that could be really troubling when you have an entire system that is built on control and containment, and that whole thing goes out the window. Good night, Peter. Enjoy the movie. It was nice chatting with you here. So in my mind, I am very suspicious that, you know, there's a lot of desire to find a reason to investigate Bitcoin and to, you know, and the other thing too is that it's going to be really hard to track transactions that are happening with Bitcoin in terms of taxing. So like when somebody makes a bundle of money on a Bitcoin investment, you know, it might be difficult to chase all of that money down. And I could see that being a problem, something that would concern the government very much, to where they'd want to investigate it so they could regulate it. What I'd love to see is if they just made some sort of flat tax that really centered more around sales that happen, and that way everybody would participate in it. And it would also diminish the role of the IRS. It would also simplify everything, and then people would be able to keep more of their wealth rather than giving it to the government to redistribute. But there would still be enough amount of taxes that would happen, but that would happen organically from a transactional standpoint, where people are actually getting something for, you know, and it's also takes the, you know, the calculations out and makes it harder for there to be loopholes, because as long as money's changing hands, there's going to be tax coming off it just automatically, and doesn't completely get rid of the IRS, but it downsizes it significantly, which I think would be a really good thing, and kind of helps balance it. Hey Dave, you missed the photo challenge, which is basically, you can watch back. I don't want to repeat it again because there's only a handful of people here. That is the XE3. Yes, sir. That is my new and latest love affair in the photographic world, and I think this is actually a keeper. I'm going to be shooting this for some time to come, I believe. The XE3. Talking about the photo challenge, printing 3 photos and then sharing those prints, pictures of the prints on social media, talking a little bit about that process. That's the photo challenge that I'm proposing for everybody here. Tiff asks, maybe you can explain why are there so many different forms of Bitcoin, IOTA, Ethereum, Litecoin? Is it a race to see who will win? And also, Dave, yeah, we kind of got, I ran out of things to talk about fairly early on, and so now I'm just kind of going into something else that interests me, which is talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies a little bit. That's a good question. I don't fully understand why there are so many. I think that some of it is that different coins have a well, I believe most of the coins, which is one of the reasons why people are embracing the digital currencies, is because they have a finite value. So there are only, I believe, and I could have these numbers wrong, 21 million Bitcoins, hey Wes, good evening. Yes, talking about cryptos a little bit. And you may know more about this than I do. I've just only recently started to get interested in it and kind of be obsessively refreshing Coinbase every 30 seconds. And I've been trying to not do that so much, but that kind of happens when you get the bug. But yeah, I think the reason why they have it is that basically to serve different needs or to serve different functions. And like the way Bitcoin started out was, you know, I don't think that Bitcoin ever was intended to get this big. I don't think that they ever thought that it would get that much mainstream attention to the point where it would be valued that highly and then become, I mean, it's almost like a gold, you know, a gold bar where it's worth, you know, I don't know how much an actual gold bar is worth, but like if you have a bar of gold and you want to go out and get a cup of coffee, that thing isn't going to be super useful to you because it's kind of esoteric and it's worth too much, and it's what kind of change is somebody going to give you back for a gold bar? You know, like you're going to cut a sliver off and hand you the rest back. I mean, there might have been a time in like ancient Rome or something where that happened, but nowadays it's a little bit too big and too cumbersome, and so I think that that's what's happened with Bitcoin, and I think other people have realized that there's a potential to make other currencies or other cryptocurrencies that could carry a similar type of idea, but do it in a different way or do it through a different structure. And the structure and the actual, like, what is a cryptocurrency, that is something that I am less clear about, which, you know, is a little bit disconcerting given the fact that I'm invested in them. Although that's part of the reason why I'm only marginally invested, is because of the fact that I lack, you know, that clarity. But you know, the fact that you can make different coins that have a different amount of capacity, I guess, holding value, you know, because like if you have, let's just say, for example, if you can only make 10 million Bitcoins, but you can make 100 million Litecoins, then the incremental value is going to be different, and is going to change the way that you could use that currency. So rather than having like one governmental body that says, okay, we're going to make one of these, one of these, and one of these, it's like one guy made something that turned into $100 bill, and then, you know, people need something that they can go get coffee, and so somebody's like, hey, I have an idea. Well, I'll make a dollar bill, or I'll make a $10 bill, and there are different things, and there's still room for inflation and all that stuff, and growth up and down. Yusuf, I think okay, so Yusuf said, I thought the currencies are algorithms that are written by individuals or groups that use the third-party mining to figure out complex equations that turn into the coins. Okay, yeah. That sounds like something that I have heard, although where I'm a little bit unclear about some of this stuff is that it's individuals writing the algorithms that other people are mining from. And that part is the thing that I've been a little bit unclear about. So you might be right about that. And how it all really works is, you know, sort of a mystery to me. And I think, and honestly, the funny thing is, like, all the blogs I've read, all the interviews, the podcasters, like, you have kind of two groups of people. You have, well, three groups. Like the Spanish Inquisition. You have four groups, if anybody watches Monty Python. So what I've heard is kind of four groups. You have people who are like super, like, programmers, people who are very, very tech savvy, who understand everything and cannot possibly explain it, make a cogent explanation that makes sense to anybody who isn't at their same level of technical capability. And so everything they have to say sounds like a different language, and it is not helpful, and you know, to me, I can't retain it. And I'm not tech unsavvy. Like, I'm fairly tech savvy, and it just is like just way over my head. The other group are people who are like traditional investors, and, you know, people who are knowledgeable and influencers in sort of traditional markets like Wall Street and the banking industry. And those people, they don't have a very good grasp, but they know how to talk about finances in a way that makes them sound very knowledgeable, while really saying nothing if you actually understand English and you can detect somebody who's just babbling and doesn't really know what to say, but has decent media training. You hear these people that are like Wall Street banker representatives, investor, you know, traditional market investors that are just like talking out of their rear end, and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to feel, what to think, what to say, and they're just kind of like trying to say something so that basically, you know, well, blah, 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 but it's a big bubble, and so you probably shouldn't invest, and, you know, just bring your money back here so that I can keep making $400,000 a year by shuffling your money around. You know, which, whatever, I have nothing against, well, I know some people that work in high finance that are not bad people, although the industry itself, you know, it's just like I know people that work in the pharmaceutical industry, and, you know, they're not bad people, but, you know, the pharmaceutical industry is not exactly one that is admirable in a lot of its business practices. So, you know, you have kind of that second group of old school investors that are trying to scare people away and don't really know what they're dealing with, but are trying to make it sound, you know, they're trying to sound competent and scare people away, but they don't really know, because this isn't something that they've ever dealt with before, nor have any of us. And then the third group is people who are just like, hey, like, you know, I don't really know exactly what's going on, but I mean, just look at the graphs. Like, come on, like, what's paper money worth? Paper money isn't worth anything anyways. Like, come on, let's do this. It's going to be fine. Look at the graphs. The graphs are all going up. It's going to be fine. Just come on, put your money in there. It's good. And sort of like the optimists. That's kind of the other group that I've seen. And I fall more towards you know, I'm fairly optimistic about it, because without knowing a lot about all this stuff, it's like, if this were a Ponzi scheme, if it was a bubble, you know, how would they have gotten this far, and how would it have grown to this point if it was just a Ponzi scheme of some sort. Like, there's no way that you'd be able to keep that going. And every market is governed by, and it is highly influenced by, I mean, look at the fact that, like, nothing has really changed financially or economically for any of the businesses in this country since Trump took office, yet the markets have just been like through the roof because people have confidence in him that he is not going to do things that, you know, it's an emotional state. It's an emotional appeal that is made to people that makes people feel good about investing their money. It's really, you know, people are still buying or not buying, and to be fair, whether or not people are buying or not buying products, that all is still based around how they feel, right? Because, like, I bought this camera because Peter Kent made me feel like I should buy this camera when he left a comment on one of my other videos and was like, yeah, man, the X100F, nobody cares about that. Get yourself an XE3. And I was like, all right, fair enough. You know, and so it's like that feeling of confidence has a lot to do with it. And after all of this time, when, you know, a cryptocurrency as an idea was the most vulnerable, had the least basis, and should have fallen right off the map, that it's continued to grow and continue to gain confidence from people at all different levels, I think is a very encouraging sign. So that even if, you know, the market does correct, and it does, you know, and people talk about it being a bubble, and again, I look at it and say, all right, even if it is a bubble, the likelihood of it being a bubble is, like, to me, since there are no governmental forces and there are no artificial forces basically regulating this thing, you're going to feel bumps in the road, and it is going to contract and expand according to the actual value of that currency. Whereas, you know, the dollar or the pound or like other currencies, they have governments and systems and there's all sorts of rigging that can be done to, you know, artificially regulate the value of that currency. And on one hand, it makes us feel safer, but on the other hand, it also suppresses the ability to have that free market. And so there's that risk with the free market where you could really get hammered as a result of that if, like, you hit a bump. But at the same time, if you have something that is truly free market, you know that that value is real and it is actual, and that it's not artificial, because if it is just a bubble, the bubble's not going to last because it'll be reflected by what's actually happening. And I think that's part of the reason why you see the, you know, the ups and the downs right now, is because it's reflecting the fact that it is a popular idea, it's a popular concept, but people are still uncertain about it, and there are, you know, it's in a very nascent stage. It's like a tire that, you know, if you think about the difference between, you know, driving in a monster truck that has huge wheels, it can run over a Coke can without you even feeling it because it's got enormous wheels. There's so much supporting it. Whereas, like, if you're on rollerblades and you hit a Coke can, forget it. You're gonna eat it because you have very small wheels. And right now, the wheels on this thing, the wheels on the Bitcoin bus going round and round, are small enough to the point where, yeah, we're still feeling bumps, but that as it gains acceptance, as it gains traction, my hypothesis is that it will, you know, smooth out. It's going to be much less of the spiky ups and downs. It's going to kind of smooth out. It's going to correct and, you know, potentially become more useful. And if not Bitcoin, one of the other currencies will do that. And I know I got some good comments here that I need to go back to, and none of those comments are ones I'm referring from you, Stephen M. I don't even know why you're here watching this, although I do appreciate the trolling. I mean, I appreciate the effort as a troll. Like, I see that you're making an effort to participate, and if that's the best you got, then that's cool. That's cool too. Wes says those complex equations you mentioned, King Uzi, are used in the processing of transactions and verifying with the blockchain to reward those contributing via processing power. They get rewarded with coin. That sounds closer to what I have heard, although the question of, like, who is the one really giving the coins? Is somebody giving the coin, or is there an actual coin somewhere out there that is a thing? In other words, if there were no computers, would Bitcoin still exists? And I'm not trying to be ultra philosophical, like if a tree falls in the woods, does it still make a sound and nobody's around to hear it? I'm saying, like, well, I guess maybe that is exactly what I'm asking, is like, you know, is there an actual thing somewhere out in the ethers that exists that is a Bitcoin that has been discovered through this process, or is it something that is completely fabricated through and through? Because I can't imagine for the life of me how it could be the former possibility, but then at the same time, then somebody is controlling it, and then that kind of breaks down some of the charm, that pulls back the curtain, as it were. Yes, I think there is a place that, like, if you go to, I think it's CoinDesk is one of the websites that they have a lot of good sites. Where I watch to track it is Coinbase.com. So that's where I go to watch a lot of that stuff. But I mean, and also on Reddit, like Reddit's got some good, you know, the Bitcoin, or maybe it's crypto. I forget what the name of it is, but if you search on Reddit for it, there's some good info about it there. Again, the problem is that most of the stuff, at least what I found from reading up on it at this point, most of the stuff that's coming out of the, you know, accepted sources like, you know, Forbes magazine and all the rest of it, it's either saying, wow, Bitcoin has really gone up. Isn't that amazing? Some people have gotten really rich. But then again, it could be a bubble and it might burst. So we're not really sure what's going to happen. So if you are going to put money into it, be really careful because you might lose it all. On the other hand, wouldn't it be cool if you got really rich? Well, let's see what happens. We'll write another article in another week talking about how, wow, it's so crazy. It's going to, you know, the funniest thing I found was like when I Googled, because that's all they know. Like nobody really knows anything at least in traditional investing. Nobody seems to know more than that about Bitcoin. So that's what all the commentary is, or sounds like to me anyhow. When I Googled Bitcoin, one of the things that came up was, you know, some, I think it might have been Forbes or a different magazine, might have been Wall Street Journal even. It was a very well, you know, reputed economic journal of some sort that was like, oh man, it's just a huge bubble. The fact that Bitcoin, everybody thinks that Bitcoin is, you know, so awesome because it's $1,000 now or it's $1,300. It's definitely going to tank and like it's, you know, whatever. And I'm like reading this as like Bitcoin is, you know, going over $16,000, and I'm like, yeah, anybody who didn't, you know, had an opportunity to buy at 1,300 and missed out on that because they read this article, they're probably going to be a little bit less trusting of the mainstream financial institutions as a result. And I don't necessarily imply any sort of malintent. I think a lot of it is just ignorance. I think there are, you know, obviously some within those financial institutions that are legitimately threatened by the idea of cryptocurrencies, and so are, you know, kind of steering their you know, mouthpieces in that direction. But you know, I think a lot of it is just that nobody really seems to know. Wes says, sort of, Bitcoin is based off the blockchain. Simply put, blockchain is a distributed ledger. It's like asking if we got rid of a bank ledger, did you really make that transaction? Okay, well, let me rephrase my question then. Gold, okay, because like, in other words, like you can retrace it back far enough till you get to a point where it's like, okay, I know that gold exists in the earth. Now, I recognize that somebody had to go through the work of mining it and fabricating it into, you know, panning for gold or employing, you know, children in some third world country for, you know, pennies a day or whatever to mine it, which I suspect is how most mining is done these days. Although, actually, having lived in Alaska for a while, interesting side note, the highway that I lived off was called, I believe it was called the $40 million highway. That was one of the, or maybe it was the $1 million, because I'm not sure, adjusting for inflation. But anyways, during World War II, they built the highway. They built that highway between Fairbanks and, I believe it was Fairbanks and Anchorage, with tailings from the local mines, because this was all loose fill that was available. And so it was, you know, gold mines that were operational. And even now, if you're a resident of Alaska, you get a dividend every year for the profits of the gold that they mine. And when I was there in '99, I was living up there, like you would get $1,000 a year dividend from the state, like tax-free, I believe, that, because obviously I wasn't paying, you know, taxes. And I didn't get it because I wasn't technically a resident. I was just going to school up there. But they paved the highway with like tailings from the gold mine, and so they, you know, because they needed that to kind of get Alaska up to speed when they were worried about the Russians and at the end of World War II or whatever, and kind of building up those defenses. So kind of paved the road up there with a lot of potentially valuable dirt that is underneath the highway. But yeah, I recognize that there is some sort of process that needs to happen to get to the point where we have gold in a form where you can present it to somebody and say this is a thing of value. My question is, with Bitcoin, what is the furthest back point you can go? What's the most raw point that you can go to with Bitcoin? I mean, would it be energy? Would it be like electrical energy is really the ultimate currency that's being repackaged? Because, you know, I guess that's the only way that I could think of it, because like it's not like there's dirt that you can mine this out of. It's really just like energy that you're harnessing to make this digital thing. And that would, to me, that would be the closest explanation I could give, which still sounds really weird. You know, because there has to be something that blockchain is made from, or that it represents, or that it comes from. Like, you know, I know that if I don't have, I know that there can be gold without it being in a bar. I know there's gold that exists out there in a natural, untouched state, a natural state. And I guess my question is like, is blockchain or Bitcoin or any of these things that exist in a natural state or in their least processed, trying to be very intersectional here, in like, you know, what's the most single-sourced, sustainably farmed, locally grown, locally harvested with sustainable practices, intersectional form of Bitcoin that I could get, the most raw form of Bitcoin that exists? What is that? And you just answered something while I was blathering. Okay, since it's just software or open source code, so tomorrow I can fork it, change some code, and boom, now I own 21 million. The price of the coin can be observed at just its cost in relation to creation. So energy per kilowatt hour. Okay. Energy per kilowatt hour is the thing that is kind of the plus cost of hardware. I see. Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, because I was thinking about actually starting to get into mining Litecoin, and apparently, like, I've heard that you can do that still, whereas with Bitcoin you need just like huge, you know, amount of hardware that would be above my pay grade, no pun intended. And so the Litecoin and some of the other smaller cryptocurrencies are a little bit more attainable with, you know, I mean, I have a decent graphics card in this computer because it, you know, is set to edit 4K and all that stuff. So I think that might, you know, that might be worth something. We'll have to see. So, yeah. Well, gang, I've really enjoyed this chat tonight. Didn't really stick to photography, but that's okay too. Even though small fish need 3 GPUs to make profit. Come on, you gotta piss all over my strawberries, man. I was really getting excited about that. I'm just kidding. Although 3 GPUs isn't that bad. I mean, that's still something. I mean, that's a substantial investment, but that's something that I could imagine, you know, without having to buy a house or a warehouse that's entirely set up for mining Bitcoin. That's something that could theoretically happen with a little bit of investment and energy. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. Yeah, I will. Yeah, that's something that I will have to look into and keep you all updated. So for anybody here that does not already follow me on any other channels, I would love it if you follow me on Twitter. I am at Living Vertical, also on Instagram at Living Vertical. I don't imagine that anybody is going to be watching the rerun of this tomorrow to this point. If you are watching, I'm sorry. And for those of you who joined me here in the chat this evening, I really appreciate it. It feels good to get back in here and shoot the breeze with you all. That's not an impossible proposition where you come back and I've sold all my cameras. I'm heating my home through mining equipment. I like that. I like that idea. It could happen. I won't make any promises one way or the other. So, but I will keep you all posted. Yeah, happy Friday. Hope you guys all have a good weekend. And I'm gonna, be working on more videos, and I'll keep you all posted about what's going on with upcoming live streams. But otherwise, I'll plan to see you all here on Fridays. for the time being, because I got a little time with my family now, so I want to try to, I'm not going to be doing the live streams every other night like I was there for a short stretch. And again, thank you all for taking the time to come out and, interact and support the work that we're doing here. I really appreciate it. So have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you again. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Adventure Photo Show, whether that is live or edited. I will make no promises, but we will see you then. Good night, everybody.